Hi and welcome to Jothishi.com. So today we are going to start a new series where we are going to discuss on the movement of Rahu from the sign of Taurus to Aries and what its impact is going to be. So the impact we'll figure out how this works. So one is we'll start with introduction of what Rahu is. Second, we will see what the impact on the entire world is, and third, we will see what the impact on each ascendant would be. That is a more personalized video for all of us. So Anand, let's start with a new series today.
Yes.
Now, in the month of April, Rahu will be moving signs.
Yes.
So before we go on to discuss when Rahu will be moving signs and what is its impact on each ascendant,
Yes.
let's understand what Rahu is and
Yes.
how does it play a role in our charts.
Yes.
Maybe if you can throw some light on that, that
Yes.
would be.
So we will take this as three parts. One, we'll start with what is Rahu, and we'll try and give some examples. Two, what is the general impact on the world and economy. So that is the second one. And third, we'll talk about each signs and ascendants about Rahu. So we'll start with a small prayer for Rahu. So, Ardhakaryam Mahaviryam Chandra Aditya Vimardhanam Simhika Garbha Sambhutam Tam Rahu Pranamamya. So basically what it states is we bow down to the great Rahu, who has only head, who is one of the most powerful, and then who came out of Simhika's Garbha. So Simhika means the lineage of lions and cats.
Okay.
So that is the lineage of Rahu, and then we bow down to the greatest Rahu kind of a thing. So we all know, right? Rahu is sort of, if you look at the world, if you look at the country today, most of the things is being ruled by Rahu as of now. So it is that powerful a planet, or technically called a Graha from that perspective. So we can take some small examples so that any person looking at this video should, after this video, should understand what exactly is Rahu.
Okay.
So for example, we look at trolling in social media.
Right.
So any small issue becomes a multiple magnified issue. You sort of make it a big issue and then you start trolling.
Okay.
That is a typical Rahu behavior.
So expansion.
Expansion. So
Right.
anything to do with reasonable expansion. So for
on
example,
the negative direction.
On the negative direction. So you find today's youngsters, spending a lot of time in pubs. You find most of them, roaming around and those kind of things. That is a typical Rahu kind of a flavor, which
Right.
comes out of things. So, for example, your parents ask you to sort of settle down. You say, no, I want to see the world. And then finally you end up in living in Shamaris. You finally get a boyfriend or a girlfriend who is, say, 5 years elder to you. So anything which is unorthodox, anything which is not normal
that
is
breaks
Rahu.
the boundary.
Yes, that breaks the boundary is normal. So you want to go abroad, you want to explore the world. So all that is related to perfectly related to Rahu. So for example, you have today's youngsters, who talk about, so for example, let us experiment, romancing, or let us experiment sex.
Living
yes, in say hills,
Right.
in cars, in buses. All that is perfectly related to Rahu. So it is completely sort of different from that perspective.
From an orthodox
Yes,
perspective.
yes. So anything beyond traditions, anything
Right.
which is opposite tradition is commonly terminated as termed as Rahu.
Okay.
So there are plenty more examples that we can talk about. So for example, you are told that you need to study this. But you say, no, I will not study this, I will explore something else. So that
Right.
is a typical Rahu behavior.
Okay.
So there is a taunt in a relationship. You find either the husband or the wife, you taunting each other. So that particular taunting each other, which leads to friction, is again a typical Rahu behavior.
Okay.
So that particular Rahu laugh is very, very. So that sly smile,
Right.
which becomes irritating after a
Okay.
certain point in time, is particularly Rahu kind of behavior.
Right. So you explained like a lot of things are like external or like breaking the boundaries,
Yes,
right?
yes.
There is a negative connotation to something and there is also a
Yes.
positive connotation,
Yes.
right? Like now an external thing could be a vaccine,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
that is basically helping humanity
Yes.
fight.
Yes.
So Rahu can also be positive from that.
Yes,
point,
Rahu
right?
actually, so most of the spiritualists, from a positive perspective, most of the spiritualists have a very strong Rahu. So beyond exploring things. So, for example, there is a lot of articles about the Western society. They have experienced whatever they wanted to experience in their life by the time they're 30, and by the time they're 35, they move into spiritual direction.
Right.
So that is also another flavor which Rahu sort of brings about. But from a medical pharma kind of a perspective, anything to do with liquor, anything to do with medicines, anything to do with smoke, all that is typically related to Rahu, and some of them can be reasonably positive from a overall perspective. But from a traditional perspective, it is still not considered.
Yes.
So having too much of medicines is still not considered from a Ayurveda Sanatana Dharma perspective as a
as a good
thing
Right.
from that thing.
So now, since you spoke about spirituality and Rahu
Yes.
as well, right? So one other thing that comes to my mind is you can go external and go internal as
Yes,
well,
yes.
right? So Rahu being, Rahu can send you both, right? Like
Yes.
it can send you externally outside
Yes.
and internally as well.
Yes, so it can send you internally as well, and then a lot of
The journey internal can happen.
Yes, journey internal can happen, and you can have fantastic spiritual journey through Rahu as well.
Okay.
So basically, 3, 6, 11, and 10. These 4 houses are fantastic for Rahu. So there are many people who say that so if you have Rahu in the 3rd house or the 6th house, so for example, most of the politicians, including our Prime Minister, they have 6th house. So Virat Kohli, 6th house Rahu. So enmity, 6th house is the house of enemies. So if you have Rahu there, you will be able to beat any enemy. So that is the general deduction there. So from that perspective, most of the people talk about Rahu to be similar to say Saturn. So it's a higher octave of Saturn. Some people say that Rahu is similar to your Sun. So it is the spread of the Sun. Some people say it is the flavor of Mars.
Right.
But actually Rahu, so you would have seen small kids, right? So small kids, it has no logical explanation. Small kids suddenly start crying. So they start crying, and then if there is an old nanny or a grandmother in the home, they know the solution, what to do. So they will come and do. It's called taking evil kind of a
Right.
thing. It's very prevalent in India. So and there is no sort of one kind of solution for it. Automatically after 15 minutes, the baby, after 1 hour of crying, the baby stops crying. So actually the baby has the ability to sense. So we have this normal spectrum, right? Normal spectrum of light. You have Vibgyor.
Right.
So from violet, green, root to red kind of a
Yes.
thing. So after violet, it is ultraviolet. And after red is infrared.
Right.
And then you have X-ray, then gamma rays.
Right.
So similarly, you have MM rays kind of a thing. So anything which is beyond the visible spectrum, that is
That
violet
is the human
to,
eye that you're talking.
that is the human eye, is beyond the human spectrum, is considered either Rahu or Ketu.
Okay.
So from a technical perspective, we consider Rahu as something beyond violet.
Okay.
So primarily high energy.
Right.
So the wavelength is less, but frequency is higher in that
Right.
particular spectrum. So anything to do with ultraviolet, anything to do with, so it's X-rays.
Got
So
it.
X-rays has so the frequency and the wavelength is different, right? So anything to do with ultraviolet, X-rays, and gamma rays. So these
Okay.
3 rays are Rahu. So that is why a child is able to see something which normal humans are not able to see. They get disturbed, they start crying, and then old nannies come and they do. So
Right.
in South India it's called Kanna, right?
Ah,
So the
nazar.
eye, evil eye. So
Nazar in
nazar
North.
in North. So they remove the nazar and kind of. So if you see cats and dogs, so cat is related to Ketu, dog is related to Rahu. Suddenly they will start barking. You don't know what is happening. So they are able to sense that frequency and wavelength which human is not able to sense.
Okay.
So they are clearly able to see this various Rahu elements. And that is how this Rahu is, we are able to visualize Rahu. So
Okay.
it is high energy. So from a planet perspective, it is a combination. We know, right? It is the movement
North,
of sun and moon,
moon, yeah. The
and
nodes
their
of the moon.
intersection in the north and the southern
South,
direction.
yes.
causes
North node and the south
Yes. So it is the exaggerated flavor of most of the planets.
Okay.
So suppose you see, heavy rock, hard metal,
heavy metal.
it is primarily related to Rahu. So there Venus comes, exaggerated version of Venus, exaggerated version of Mercury, along with Rahu. So there is a Rahu flavor there.
Right.
Then if you talk about movies which explore something very different, Again, exaggerated version of Venus and Rahu.
Like
kind of a thing.
Interstellar and all these
Yes,
movies which
yes.
talk about going outer space.
Yes, yes. All have a very strong sort of a Rahu.
So one
connection.
question is, if you have a dog at home, does it enhance the power of Rahu?
Yes. So ideally, a cat at home enhances the power of Ketu. A dog at home enhances the power of Rahu. So for example, if you want to be a sportsman, if you want to get into movies and then go beyond boundaries, if you want to be a politician, it is preferable that you have. I mean, if you have Rahu in third or sixth, 10th. So 10th house Rahu is Raja Yoga.
Right.
So or 11th house, it is correctly related to your particular profession. So most of these sportsmen, whether it is Virat Kohli, whether it's Dhoni, whether it's Dravid, or whether you take Ronaldo or Messi, they would have started in Mars Dasha, and by the time they're 17, Rahu would have started. And that explosion, so even politician, if you see 45 onwards, Rahu Dasha will be active for the next 18 years. So by the time they are 50, 55, they would have gotten member of parliament or yes. So that kind of a flavor is fantastically very strong from a Rahu perspective. Yes. So you would have seen a lot of people doing business, right? So you are partners and all that. So suddenly one partner comes out and the other partner cheated him of money and all that. You can be reasonably very sure that the other partner has a very strong Rahu in his particular chart.
So should one be careful when
one should be extremely careful when you choose a Rahu partner. They can go to both the ways. They can so for example, a company having 4,000 crore loss, but the valuation is $5 billion. It is a pakka 100% flavor of Rahu. So the promoter has extremely strong Rahu characteristics, and Rahu characteristics, it can go high, at the same time it can fall in the same pace. So you need to be very careful in investing in these kind of companies. So these IPOs are coming, right? Most of these startups. You need to be extremely careful in investing in these Rahu, because the flavor of Rahu is very strong. There are brokers who are making money through the system, and any time if you're not reasonably careful, it is going to be, because that Rahu flavor is extremely strong in all the participants involved in that particular kind of.
So the rise and the fall are equally strong.
Equally strong, and the people backing are also Rahu people. So not necessarily from a fraud thief perspective, but from a Rahu flavor. That is, they want something beyond the boundaries. So today you have 5,000 customers. Tomorrow they want multi-million customers, or 5 million customers. That is the kind of flavor that they are.
Exponential growth.
Yes, exponential growth.
Something which goes beyond.
Yes. So the graph which goes exponentially at 70 degrees, 80 degrees curve is what the Rahu flavor clearly denotes. Yes. So we know the myth of Rahu, right? So there was something called Samudra Manthan, and the story behind Samudra Manthan is very clear. Asuras were gaining more power than Devas. Devas feared that they will lose their lives, or they will not remain. So that is why the world is, today wherever you see, it is full of Rahu. So if you see, the negative emotions that happens in social media, if you see the trolling that happens, if you see anybody wants to become famous, they do something negative so that you get immediate publicity. All that is completely related to Rahu. So you see kids popping up pills and then getting energy and those kinds. So everything is related to Rahu. So we are sort of facing the same situation where the negative direction Asuras are gaining more popularity. So the Devas went to Mahavishnu. Mahavishnu gave this idea of getting nectar. So for nectar, Vasuki was used as a tool, and then you had Kurma avatar there, and then churning of nectar happened, where if you drink that ocean happened, and if you drink that nectar, you will live for eternity, kind of a thing. So there is a person called Daitya, so the demon called Swarbhanu, and Swarbhanu was sitting in the queue of Devas where the nectar was offered. And then sun and moon noticed this. So that is why Rahu is enemy towards sun and moon. And Rahu sort of eats up sun and moon. That is why eclipses and all happen actually. So sun and moon complained to Vishnu, and then if you see, Vishnu used his Sudarshana Chakra and cut his thing. So the head portion is called Rahu, and the body is called Ketu. So now, if you see, celestial objects, the Milky Way and all that, it is all sort of somehow related to Sudarshana Chakra. So
Okay.
it's all in the Sudarshana format. So
Right.
even our celestial things, the comets that move, there is some connection in terms of Sudarshana there. And then Rahu became so they already drank, right? So
Right.
they will live for eternity.
Yes.
But there is a huge component of demonic nature there,
Right.
and that is exactly what we are witnessing today
In the society
in the
today.
society as well, in terms of Rahu and Ketu flavor kind of a thing.
Got
So
it.
that is the story behind
The chakra.
the Rahu and Ketu
Right.
and the Sudarshana Chakra
Right.
kind of a thing.
Right. So before we wind up, one question is
Yes.
uh, people are scared of Rahu, right?
Yes, yes.
Anything that you would like to suggest
Yes.
here in terms of to remove fear from people,
Yes.
right?
So actually, Rahu can be positive. Rahu can be reasonably negative in the life. So if it is reasonably negative in the chart, you will move towards excessive alcoholism, substances, and killing people, and so most of the dacoits, most of the robbers have very very strong negative Rahu.
Okay.
And if it is positive, you will sort of conquer the world. You will want to conquer the world.
Right.
You will want to become richest man in the world, the best singer in the world, and those kind of things. So there is a story where Indra struck Swarbhanu.
Okay.
So when it captured sun thing, Indra struck Swarbhanu and got put sun again in the same position.
Right.
So any prayers towards Indra is a fantastic thing for Rahu.
Okay.
So there is also any prayers to Devi, especially Parvati.
Okay.
Is Parvati Devi is Gauri or Uma
Okay.
or Durga kind of a thing is
Right.
fantastic from a Rahu
Perspective.
yes. So Sarva Mangala Mangalye, Shive Sarvada.
Right.
So those kind of chants are fantastic for a Rahu. And Rahu's day is Saturday. Saturday in the evening. So if you notice, all movie releases on a Friday, right?
Right.
So Venus is day.
Right.
So Venus completely related to movies, and you enjoyment also. Venus is also enjoyment. Saturday evening is again a day of the second level of enjoyment.
Okay.
So that is where Rahu comes in, exaggerated
Right.
form of
Venus.
and
Okay.
that is the day of Rahu. So any Saturday evening, if you pray to Indra or Devi Durga,
Right.
it is a fantastic thing to
Right.
appease Rahu.
Lalita Sahasranamam
Lalita
also can
Sahasranam
be
is
chanted.
fantastic. Saturday evenings, Lalita
Right.
Sahasranam, fantastic for.
Right. We can add the link in the
Yes.
description box and then
Yes.
people can find. So I hope this gave you a good insight into what Rahu is and how, what the flavor of Rahu brings in. If you would like to understand where Rahu is placed in your chart and how it will impact your life, do log on to Jothishi.com. Thank you.